All right. So, first of all, let's frame this discussion again to remind us the issues that we're exploring. We just left behind this discussion of assimilation theory. And if you remember, it was conceived by scholars as they studied pre 1965 immigration groups. And basically, that means European immigration groups. And what they noticed when it came to assimilation, that these immigrants would gradually adopt American culture. They'd be influenced and acculturated into the dominant culture. And therefore, through the succession of years, if not decades, you see them becoming more assimilated. And therefore, you see less racial prejudice, racial discrimination that they experience. And certainly that's a generational phenomenon, right? Let's also remember that we're looking at education. And as traditional scholars, again, that looked at immigration before 1965, what they noticed is that education, the American educational system, is one institution, among others, that serves as vehicles towards assimilation because it helps to create a common culture. It leads to the gradual erosion of pre-migration beliefs, viewpoints, and so forth. Even language. It leads to the proliferation among immigrant families with English rather than say Italian or Hebrew or name your language, right? Okay, so education is one part of that institution. So again, we are kind of seeing how this applies to post 1965 Asian immigration students. Okay, in other words, um, let's recall that we talked about this thing called model minority, right? Which you could cite as a form of exceptionalism. Now, exceptionalism, and by the way, it's spelled, if you're not familiar with this term, exceptionalism, exceptionalism. And it basically means that well, if you claim some sort of exceptionalism, you're claiming that there's some sort of elevated status or even superiority that's somehow attached to a certain group of people, right? Whether that group of people is determined by, say, religion, by nation, by ethnicity, and other factors. Okay, so there's such a thing, for example, as American exceptionalism, Chinese exceptionalism. You can think of numerous things, right, in your imagination. Now, what we're doing is exploring whether there's such a thing as Asian American exceptionalism when it comes to, as we mentioned before, the empirical um, reality of upward mobility in society, whether through income level, socioeconomic status, professional level, and educational level. Okay, so is there such a thing as Asian American exceptionalism as imagined by the model minority image? Now, going to schooling, is success due to Asian culture? And then is that combined with the American school system that, in principle awards excellence regardless of race or ethnicity or social class? All right, so, we talked about the statistics and the data, and that's impressive, but they do hide or obscure other facts that ensure success. Okay, so what we have to look at are those more hidden factors, and also we have to look at the hidden issues behind educational success of Asian Americans that aren't so great or exceptional. Now, let's get back to this um, assimilation perspective as it applies to Asian American students. And what's found here in the research is that for more recent Asian American students, as stated in the slide, Asian American success often breaks with the traditional assimilationist theory, or I've called it also just plainly assimilation theory in previous slides. Okay, so it breaks with assimilation perspectives. Now, again, the classical assimilation theory, which we talked about, it's the view that immigrants integrate culturally and socially into the larger dominant culture, the larger dominant society, and again, you have the eventual disappearance, erosion of pre-migration culture and attitudes, leading to full assimilation. Now, when it comes to success in the educational system, to explore that a bit further than I already did, what assimilation theory, or how it views education, rather, is that, this is an institution, the educational system in the United States in this case, whereby student ability and student drive is a big factor in educational success. And once you put, this student, you integrate them into the U.S. schooling system, and that schooling system is based on meritocracy. What does that mean? Well, you're awarded by merit. If you are, again, if you have the ability, the natural ability, as well as the drive, well, you're going to do well. So there's this notion of the educational system as having objective standards of achievement. And that's easy to think about, right? Things like grades, for example, or even your IQ measurement, or let's say AP classes, these resources for students, right? Honor roll, things like that. These are objective standards of achievement. Okay, so therefore, when you think about that, what I just described, and also think about how classical assimilation theory, widely understood, argues that you see the erosion of pre-migration attitudes. Well, when it comes more specifically or particularly to the educational system, well, race, ethnicity matters less, right? Because it's based on meritocratic systems, meritocracy. So therefore, you don't see racial discrimination as really being a crucial factor in educational attainment according to traditional assimilation theory. Okay, but let's see how what I just described here, how that applies to Asian American students. First of all, I remark here, and again, this is the results of research conducted by scholars in the field. What these scholars uncovered is that for more recent Asian Americans, and certainly that means today, you see the crucial role of ethnic networks and community rather than full integration. Okay, so what this is arguing is that, they rely on the ethnic community where they live in, rather than, again, full integration. And what are these? Resources like language classes within their ethnic networks, exam preparations, preparatory courses, academic clubs. Okay, these aren't necessarily part of the actual school they attend. They're part of their ethnic community or ethnic network that were put in place to ensure a better outcome, right? Or at least to hopefully lead to a better outcome. Okay, so in other words, rather than full integration again, Asian American students take advantages of ethnic resources. So you don't see this complete erosion, right, of ethnicity. Moreover, you don't see this idea of, race or ethnicity completely doesn't matter, right? Or matters much less is the way I should actually put it. Okay. Contrary to the traditional assimilation theory, you can't completely discount the role of race and ethnicity when it comes to Asian Americans. Okay. So another thing that scholars have noticed, this is especially true when they interview not just the students, but the families, right? The parents. They find that race oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes indeed plays a role in the pursuit of education. Okay, so in fact, it's been cited as a motivating factor in the, let's say, immigrant parents, them really pressuring their children to do well. Immigrant families often consider higher education as the best approach to overcome their disadvantaged social location, which may have been determined by race in the first place. Okay, so as related to, again, assimilation theory, Asian Americans succeed to overcome discrimination, not due to the complete disappearance of it. Okay, so hopefully you see that how race and ethnicity still matters in this case. All right. So again, these are two ways that Asian American student success is not completely befitting with the traditional view. Now, scholars also emphasize a few more things. They emphasize the unrecognized problems faced by Asian American students. And what does this mean? Well, oftentimes it's related to mental health. And we're going to get into that later, how you'll see a disproportionate amount of Asian American students suffering from mental health that was directly a result from this pressure to succeed. Okay, and again, you're going to see this disparity in mental health when you compare Asian Americans with other ethnic groups, other ethnic students. And also, let's remember something that we already explored, the lack of parity among different Asian ethnicities. Okay, it's obviously the case that, and you now know this, that there's different educational outcomes or degrees of success when it comes to different Asian American groups. As we acknowledged earlier, there's a pretty wide gap between what we call in this class Indo-Chinese, right? That's to say Vietnamese, Hmong, Cambodians, Laotians, compared to, let's say, the children of professionals from Taiwan or China. Then the children of, well-off families and parents, right, who are already doctors or lawyers and engineers, right? So you see higher success when it comes to, let's say, South Asian students compared to, again, Indo-Chinese. And here we see how history matters, right? Because the circumstances faced by refugees who came here with virtually nothing, and as we acknowledged earlier, with no job skills whatsoever, and had to build themselves from the ground up. Well, you couple that with trauma, as we discussed in the past. It's much more of a formidable barrier to overcome than, let's say, students whose parents are, let's say, professionals like doctors and engineers. Okay, we'll move to the next slide.